Hi, I'm Jim McKenzie. I live in Mariposa County, California, and I work for the Mariposa County Resource Conservation District. This presentation is the last in a series of 4 which deals with dead trees. The first presentation in the series is a brief introduction to the western bark beetle, the insect causing the tree mortality. The second presentation is residential hazard tree removal. This describes the operation necessary to remove dead trees from around houses. The third is full-scale logging operations with log removal out beyond residential areas. The fourth and last in the series is this presentation, cleaning up the landscape out beyond residential areas without log removal. Log removal is one of the largest cost components when dealing with dead trees. If there is no market for the logs, there can be no payment from the buyer to offset the cost of loading and transporting the logs. This presentation shows how logs can be left on or near the place where they fell without undue harm to the viewscape, to fire safety, and to the recovery of forest health. This depends, of course, on the availability of unused space on the property. These 3 images were photographed in early 2019 from a car on Sherlock Road in Mid-Pines. The trees in these images died sometime before 2017 and either fell by themselves or were cut, some by PG&E and some by Mariposa County Public Works. Scenes like this abound in Mariposa County, both in areas visible from the road net and, just as significantly, in areas not visible. Landowners wishing to minimize high-intensity fires on their property in the future need to take action. This presentation provides some ideas for taking action in a more affordable way than trying to remove logs. Felling and disposing of large numbers of trees that are sick or dead out beyond the 100-foot defensible space perimeter can be much different than what was described in the residential hazard case. Let's discuss some of the potentially prohibitive variables when it comes to logging operations in the landscape. The first consideration is cost. A Mariposa area property owner contracted for a full-scale operation involving 100 trees in the spring of 2015. The estimated total cost came to over $50,000. The net cost to the property owner, however, was near zero. The difference in the 2 costs can be attributed to the fact that there was a market for the logs back then. Selling the logs offset most of the cost. Another consideration is ground disturbance. Dragging logs around tears up the ground. Be prepared to do some work to prevent erosion. Equipment. In the contract job discussed just moments ago, the property owner estimated that the cost, new, of the equipment used on his job would be close to $750,000. Slash. Basically, every logging operation generates some. The most commonly used method for dealing with slash in this scenario is Lop and Scatter. The contractor cuts the slash up so it isn't more than 28 inches above the ground and then scatters it around. This often results in a landscape appearance that is, in a word, ugly. Space. The operation requires lots of space. We'll discuss this in more detail later. This sort of operation also requires trained and licensed people. This is an absolute must. This slide tells the tale regarding the economics. There may be no market for the logs now, so there are no sales dollars to offset the total cost to the landowner. What's worse is that there may be no nearby sites identified where the unmarketable logs may be taken and quote-unquote parked permanently. Any sites taking logs may be half a day away or more. Loading and transporting logs is, to state the obvious, expensive. And here is how a cold deck improves the situation if log removal is not affordable. 1. It gathers the logs, which are flammable, and stacks them in neat piles in one or more places. The stacks, or decks, may burn in a fire, but harm to the environment from heat is localized to the area around the deck. There will be more small tree survival, particularly if grasses and shrubs are kept down around the decks. 2. Decking the logs facilitates access by avoiding the random log crisscrossing often seen after the felling, limbing, and bucking have ended. Equipment and other vehicles can more easily move around the terrain. And 3, the option still exists to cut the logs into smaller pieces later to be piled and burned or put to other uses. Shown here are a couple of cold decks. First, fell the tree, limit, and cut it into convenient-sized lengths. Choose a site for the deck away from surface fuels and seedlings. Move the log sections to the deck site and stack them. Pile and burn the limbs and other slash a safe distance away. Periodically remove any new surface fuels from around the deck site. This small skid steer can move logs 18 inches in diameter and 10 feet long. Larger logs require something larger to do the moving. This equipment can also support a grapple on the front. This allows feeding several small fires from a larger stack of slash. Note the seedling and juvenile pines, which are located clear of the decks. Slash has been disposed of. This results in resiliency. Without a lot of surface fuel, most seedlings and larger trees will survive should a wildfire occur. Also note the distance between the deck and the new trees. These particular pines are naturally occurring and are not the result of reforestation planting. Fuel reduction was done on this site in 2009, opening up the area to sunlight. There wasn't much competition. This has encouraged buried pine seeds to sprout. We include these instructions in most of our presentations when contractors might be used. Planning is key. Decide exactly what you want done and list your requirements on paper. Interview multiple contractors, choose one, and finalize a plan. Document the terms and conditions in a memorandum of understanding.
In closing, let me emphasize 4 things. Number 1, leaving logs where they dropped invites understory and other flammable vegetation to sprout and grow in between the logs, competing with seedling and juvenile conifers and oaks and creating a significant fuel load over time. Number 2, this fuel load, when burned, can kill most, if not all, seedling and juvenile trees in the immediate area when the next fire occurs, and it will occur. 3, leaving logs where they lay inhibits the free movement of maintenance equipment needed to properly manage the forest. And 4, building cold decks can limit high heat from logs on fire to the area immediately surrounding the deck. One last word. If there are a few logs you can't reach, don't fret. Leave them lie to serve as habitat for the small critters.